Hello YouTube, this is Shellwig08 coming to you again to talk about the upcoming pre-release. This time the set is new Phyrexia, and the pre-release will be happening from May 7th and May 8th. It's this weekend. So let's get started. First things I want to talk about is the removal. The first card is Forced Worship. This is a lot like Guard Duty was in Rise of the Eldrazi, except with Forced Worship, you have the ability to return it to your hand. So if they play a bigger creature, you can always bring it back to your hand and cast it on their bigger creature. Basically, you're always keeping their biggest threat under control. So don't underestimate Forced Worship. Seems pretty good to me. Next card I want to talk about is called Exclusion Ritual. It's another white enchantment, another removal. But I would caution you from playing more than one of these in your main deck. 6 is a lot to pay for just one creature or one permanent removal, but it is a non-land permanent, so this does kill planeswalkers. It seems pretty good, but I wouldn't overdo it because it costs so much. And the second effect isn't going to do a lot in limited because you're mainly going to be playing your removal on their bombs, and their bombs are not usually going to have multiples of. The next card is Enslave. I'm really excited that they reprinted this. I love this artwork, and it's a really interesting card, especially within the context of the set, because if you use Enslave on a creature with Infect, it doesn't deal damage to them, it does damage in the form of Infect, so your opponent would be getting poison counters each turn, or each upkeep of your turn, from their own Infect creature, and I think that's a really cool interaction. So I'm glad it's reprinted. It's an excellent 2-for-1, really good and limited. Dismember is also really good removal. I guess you could make the argument that it's the best because you can play it in any color. But I really think it's very strong. -5/-5 is a powerful effect, and if you pull one of these, you should probably play it because it seems really good. Tormentor Exarch is one of my favorites from the Exarch cycle, mostly because of his second ability, the -0/-2. This is a good 2-for-1. It gets rid of little infect guys and little metalcraft dudes, and so Tormentor Exarch seems pretty good. Another interesting thing is that if you're playing Infect or whatever, and you have like maybe a Plague Stinger or something, and you can boost them +2 without having to dedicate an entire card to a crappy boost spell like you used to have to do with the Volshock Heartstoker. This is an excellent upgrade. This might actually get played in limited. Volt Charge seems really good. Lightning Bolt with Proliferate. There's not a lot to talk about, but just be aware that this card seems pretty good too. Beast Within is an interesting card that is in the set. It gives removal to green, which is something that green doesn't usually get. So this is something that you need to be conscious of when you're playing against green decks. Don't assume that they don't have any defense against your bombs. They do have ways to kill them now, and Beast Within is an excellent card. Blinding Soul Eater is one that I have an eye on. I'm not sure how good it's going to be, but it seems pretty interesting. Definitely one to try out. It's like a Blinding Mage that you can play in any color. You don't have to be white to have this effect now. So Blinding Soul Eater seems pretty interesting. Definitely worth trying, and seems like decent removal. It's time to move on to the beats. These are cards that are not rares, but can win games on their own. The first one is Porcelain Legionnaire. I'm so stoked to play this guy if I get him. 3/1 First Strike is just ridiculous within the context of the set. Infect is really strong right now, and First Strike is one of the best ways to defeat it. Something that you can compare this card to, it's not a perfect comparison, but it kind of gives you a glimpse at the power level of the Porcelain Legionnaire within a limited standpoint, is Trusty Machete on a core duelist. Basically a 3/2 double strike. Now, that's a pretty good beating. This Legionnaire doesn't have double strike, but whenever a creature blocks it, it will deal the combat damage first with first strike, so it's a similar comparison, not perfect though. Porcelain Legionnaire seems like a really, really strong card, and will be especially good in multiples. You'll be able to play them on turn 2 and really start smashing face. The next card is Thundering Pteranodon. This guy seems pretty cool too. A big fatty you can play in any color, and if you can power him out on turn 4 without taking too much of your life away, then you should probably go for it, because a 5/4 trample is pretty strong and limited. Pretty much anything with power greater than 3 is usually pretty good. So Thundering Pteranodon seems really good. Blighted Agent is worth talking about too. An unblockable infect creature is very efficient, especially in this set with a lot of equipment running around. You just throw some random equipment on this guy and all of a sudden your opponent's on a really, really fast clock. So Blighted Agent seems really good. Analogous to Plague Stinger, really. Impaler Strike is one I kind of like right now. I haven't gotten the chance to play with it yet because it's not until this weekend, but if I pull one, I'll probably try it out. A 3/1 flyer seems pretty aggressive, and the card draw ability seems pretty cool too. Razor Swine is one that seems pretty good. I also am interested to see how good this card will be in Booster Draft, since there aren't that many red infect cards. I wouldn't think that this would get picked up too quick, but I feel like this card can get there. A 2/1 first strike infect, like I was talking about earlier with the Porcelain Legionnaire, that first strike is a really strong ability in this set, and infect on top of that just seems really good. The only other card that I can think of that's like that is the Phyrexian Crusader, and that was a rare. They got Razor Swines running around at common. You're going to be able to pick these up in multiples, and it's just going to be really, really powerful. Triumph of the Hordes is like this set's Overrun. Basically, you throw down a bunch of creatures. They don't even need to be infect types. You just throw down a bunch of guys, a bunch of tokens or whatever. You slam a Triumph of the Hordes, and all of a sudden you've got a game-winning swing on your hands. Sickle Slicer seems really cool too. He's kind of like a remake of the Volshock Morningstar, except with the Living Weapon upgrade. This seems really good, especially in context with infect guys, evasion guys. If you pull a Sickle Slicer and you don't play it, you're playing limited wrong. Sickle Slicer is just really, really good, and you'll be able to use it and move it around on turns when you don't draw a relevant spell. You'll be able to use this. Sickle Slicer is really good. I'm looking forward to getting one. Next, I want to talk about the bombs. I'm not going to talk too much about the Praetors and the Chancellors, just some other ones that might not have received as much attention from other people. So the first one I want to start out with is Phyrexian Ingester. This guy seems really, really cool. Oh, sorry, you can't see the font there. I had a little joke that said, nom nom nom. Basically, he eats your opponent's threats. So, like, supposing they slam a Chancellor, some 6/6 or whatever, the next turn you play Phyrexian Ingester, he imprints their bomb, and all of a sudden you have like a 9/9. That's ridiculous. Seems very powerful, excellent 2-for-1. I love this guy in Limited. Next card is Chancellor of the Dross. He's pretty good, but the first thing you need to remember whenever you see him is that he's basically a flying worm coil engine. Dude's got lifelink. This card is really strong. Next is Molten Steel Dragon. This is one that doesn't look too good the very first time you read it, but then when you think about it, man, is this card scary. Let's say your opponent has 3 plains, 3 mountains. They're playing white-red. They drop Molten Steel Dragon, and the next turn they don't get a land. So they have 3 plains and 3 mountains on the turn they're attacking. They activate the ability 3 times with their mountains, and then 3 times more with 2 life instead of the red mana. So their total cost is only 6 life and 3 mana, and all of a sudden they're attacking you for 10 damage in the air the next turn. That's ridiculous. If you're not prepared for a Molten Steel Dragon, this guy is going to just maul you. Let's imagine a worse situation where they're ahead of you in life total. So let's say they're at like 17, you're at 15. Sure. They slam a Molten Steel Dragon. The next turn they miss their land drop, like usually happens on turn 7 or 8 or whatever. They activate 3 times, then they use their life to boost him even more, and it doesn't even catch up with them until you're both paying 14 life for his attack. Molten Steel Dragon gets big fast. Imagine this guy with Phyrexia, or Glistening Oil, Tainted Strike. Molten Steel Dragon will just eat you alive. Phyrexian Swarmlord is a card I'm really excited. I really hope I get one. He seems really fun. Basically, he makes tons and tons of insect creature tokens, and eventually you just get overran with insect infect tokens. Seems pretty good. Jorkadine the Prevailer is one I'm really excited about. I love the artwork. The flaming sword is really, really cool. 5/4 first strike. Once again, first strike coming up big. But the thing to realize here is that the Metalcraft ability on this creature works on himself. So by the time you have Metalcraft on, he's an 8/4 first strike. 8. Ridiculous. These are the cards that I wouldn't recommend playing in Limited. Most of these don't do things or have too much issue with them. This one in the bottom right, Viridian Harvest, just gains you life sometimes. The next one over, Green Hilt Trainee, boosts your creatures, but you have to boost him first, so why not just take out the middleman? Next one, Dementia Bat, 5 for a 2/2 flyer, just seems like a bad deal. And then paying 5 more to get a Mind Rot effect. That's paying 10 for discard 2. That just seems really bad. Scrapyard Salvo seems pretty bad too, since it only damages players. You're still going to lose to creatures if they have them. Up on the top right, we move over to Furnace Scamp, a 1/1 that reads like he has a cool ability, but is essentially just going to be a 1/1 for 1, and is not going to be very useful except in the most aggressive Battlecry decks. Evil Presence turns a land into a swamp, but there's only one card that has Swamp Walk in the set, so it's not relevant at all, really. I mean, like, maybe against Inkmoth Nexus and something, but, I mean, it's pretty bad. Surgical Extraction is a really good constructed card, but in Limited, where people don't really have multiple, Surgical Extraction is just going to remove a card from their graveyard. I mean, that's not very good. And lastly, Defensive Stance. This is probably the best of the 8. Oops, whoa. Holy moly. Alright, there we go. Sorry about that, folks. It gives a creature -1/+1. This is a good sideboard card against dorky infect guys, but I wouldn't recommend it. Next one I want to talk about is Marrow Shards. I think we're out of the bombs here. We're just into cards I want to talk about now. Marrow Shards seems like an interesting sideboard card since it takes care of a lot of new infect creatures and a lot of old ones that we're used to as well. So, and you can play it in every color. So Marrow Shards is a really good sideboard card. I wouldn't put it in the main deck though. This next card is Xenograph. If you're gonna play it, make sure that you have the correct cards to back it up. Just saying, choose Golem. And next is Mutagenic Growth. This card is going to define the set, I think, as far as Limited is concerned. This is a pump spell that comes out of nowhere. You can't plan for it. Everybody has access to it. This card is bonkers. It's really good for surprising people and taking down their bombs when you block them, but if you're winning, the best way to play this card is to just, I don't know, say you're attacking with a beefy dude, and they're going to bunch block you with a couple of other dudes, and like they probably would if they intend to survive. This is where you slam the Mutagenic Growth, and all of a sudden you're trading your Mutagenic Growth for both of their creatures, an excellent 2-for-1, and you get to keep your bomb. So Mutagenic Growth is going to be out and about, and if there's ever a time to play Mental Misstep in Limited, it's when your opponent has Mutagenic Growth. Mental Misstep I don't really see as being that good in Limited, but against Mutagenic Growth, it is a silver bullet. Next card worth talking about is Active Aggression. When I first read this card, I was like, oh cool, an expensive threaten that anybody can use. But you're not supposed to use it as a threat. And what most people fail to realize is that it's really good to use on your opponent's turn. Here's how you do it. Say they attack with 2 creatures. You slam the act of aggression, take one of their creatures, untap it, and then block it with their other creature. At this point, damage is assigned. There's no other attacking creatures that aren't blocked, so you don't take any damage, and both of their creatures can trade with each other. That's an excellent way to 2-for-1 with active aggression. And the last card I want to talk about is Rage Extractor, and this is nothing like its predecessor, really crappy predecessor from Worldwake. You know which one I'm talking about. Anyways, this card actually seems okay. Like, if I was in a booster draft, I might try building a deck around it because it deals damage equal to the spell's converted mana cost. And there are a lot of really expensive Phyrexian mana cards. And if you play them on, like, turn 4 and you get the creature and a Lava Axe effect, that's pretty powerful. Another thing is that when you play other smaller guys, you get little lightning bolt effects going on. But my favorite interaction is with this member, giving one creature -5/-5 and getting a free lightning bolt. This seems really strong, and Rage Extractor is one to think about, but not necessarily play in sealed, maybe in booster draft. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed my little spiel about new Phyrexia. Tell me about how your pre-release goes. I'd love to hear from you. Hopefully I do well at mine, and I hope to have some opening vids coming up pretty soon. Thanks for watching. Until next time, this is Showago8, opening the booster pack so you can see what's inside.